There's an old joke in the Ontario Hockey League that reminds us that the games in the league are played on weekends, right? It's a weekend league. But if something goes wrong in one of those games, if you need a response from the league, well, good luck with that, because the league offices are closed on weekends, when the games are being played. So you'll have to wait until Monday morning at least for that response. Sometimes Tuesday, maybe even Wednesday. And the challenge with this, of course, is if that's something that happens, might lead to a suspension, for example, to one of your players, and it happens on a Friday night and you've got another game on the Saturday or Sunday or even both, well, your player might not be able to play because we're waiting for the league to issue its ruling. I was reminded of this just last week when a school day game was played in the league. Those are the games that start at 11 o'clock in the morning. This happened on a Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock. And I want to be clear about this. I'm not saying anything about the player who delivered the hit or the team that he plays for. The player's not a bad person. The team's not an awful team. There's nothing about that in this. Although I will say, just briefly, I don't think the hit was bad at all. In fact, the officials looked at it, initially thought maybe it's a 5. They determined it was a 2. The game goes on. The player serves his 2-minute sentence. The problem is that the player was later suspended. And there are a couple of problems with this. One is the suspension came later after the league reviewed medical records, for example. And so it makes me ask the question whether or not we're determining the suspension based on the result of the play or on the act that happened within the play. Again, on the ice, it was determined a 2-minute minor. After we look at the medical records, I'm sorry that a player was hurt. We don't want to see players get injured, but sometimes in a physical, fast-moving game, injuries happen. But just because the player got injured, a 2-minute penalty suddenly turns into a 3-game suspension. I'm not sure how I feel about that, and I think it's a bit of a gray area. But more to the point, in this particular instance, it happens in a game on a Wednesday morning. That player played again on Friday night before the suspension was issued on the Saturday, and he was told he'd have to sit for the next 3 games. How on earth did he play the next game? How on earth do we have a league that cannot rule by Friday night on a game that was played on Wednesday morning? You've got more than a full 48 hours to gather all of the information you need to make your judgment in this case. The league told me that in cases like this, it has to gather all of the pertinent information, including medical records, for example, before issuing its ruling. You can get those records in 48 plus hours. In fact, the player played that next game, scored twice as his team won again. How would you like to be the team that was beat by his team? Do you think you'd like those 2 goals back and his impact on that game, especially when points matter so much with the playoff push? Listen, I get that you want to be careful. I get that you want to get it right. I feel like I'm repeating myself here. But there is no way that it should take from Wednesday morning until Saturday to get a ruling. Not in this era when information can be shared electronically so easily. Let's make sure we're dealing with discipline in a more timely manner. You want to be a weekend league? That's one thing. If you can't make a decision by Friday for something that happened on Wednesday, that's another. And it puts the reputation of your league at stake. I'm Farwell. It's Friday. We'll see you at the rink on the weekend.